The Silent Warrior. The workshop was quiet except for the soft buzz of machines and the clink of metal parts. Eli wiped the sweat from his brow as he adjusted the panel on the damaged armor. It was late and he had already worked on 4 units today, but this one was different. This armor belonged to an alien warrior, a female from the Zarian species. Tall, silent, always silent. She sat in the corner of the room, her large frame hunched a little, head lowered. Her armor was cracked at the shoulders and the chest plate had deep slashes. This was not the first time Eli had seen battle-damaged gear, but something about her made him pause. She had not spoken a single word since arriving, not even to give her name. She only looked at him once when he entered, then turned her head away like she didn't care if he helped or not. As he worked, Eli noticed something strange. Her hands were not steady. She was gripping the chair tightly, her sharp claws pressed against the surface. She wasn't just tired, she was shaking. He bent over to tighten a joint near the power core and then looked up. That's when he saw it. A single tear slid down her cheek. He froze. The warrior didn't move or wipe it away. She kept her face still, but her breathing was deep and uneven. She was crying. Eli didn't say anything. He just kept working, but his hands were slower now. His mind was racing. What could make a powerful warrior cry like that? He checked the inner lining of the chest plate and saw something worse. Burn marks. Long, thin ones that didn't match any enemy weapon. They looked like electrical scars, not from battle, from torture. He blinked and stepped back a little. She noticed his pause. Her head turned slowly. Their eyes met. Her eyes were sharp but tired. There was no anger in them, only warning, as if she was silently begging him not to ask anything. Ali nodded once and continued working. When he finished the outer plating, he took a deep breath and walked to the tool shelf. He grabbed a soft cloth and came back to polish the helmet. She stayed quiet, watching him now, her face unreadable. The helmet had a dent on one side and he started smoothing it. The silence between them felt heavy. He wanted to say something, anything, but he knew some wounds went deeper than words could reach. After another few minutes, the work was almost done. Eli glanced at her again. Her breathing had calmed, but her eyes stayed focused on the wall, now distant, as if she wasn't really here. He remembered hearing stories about the Zarian war camps, how their soldiers were trained from childhood, how they were forced to fight even when injured. He had seen hardened aliens before, but none like her, none that looked strong on the outside but so broken inside. He reached out carefully and offered her water. She didn't take it at first, but after a long pause her hand moved. She drank slowly, then gave the bottle back. Without a word, Eli gave a small smile. "Name's Eli," he said gently. She blinked once, then looked away again. He didn't push. The last bolts clicked into place and the armor was whole. Again, he stood up and wiped his hands. She stood too without a sound. Her presence filled the room but left it colder somehow. As she walked toward the exit, she stopped near the door. Her head turned just slightly, then she whispered, "Thank you." It was the first time he heard her voice. It was soft, not what he expected, full of something strange and heavy, like it hadn't been used in years. Before he could reply, she stepped out and vanished into the corridor. Eli stood there in silence, the empty chair still warm from where she had sat, the echo of her quiet voice still hanging in the air, he had fixed her armor. But he couldn't stop thinking about the one thing he couldn't fix, whatever pain she was carrying inside. And he knew deep down this was not the last time he would see her. This was only the beginning. Cracks beneath the surface. Eli came early the next morning. The workshop was empty, but he prepared. Anyway, he cleaned the table where her armor had rested. He arranged the tools. Again, even though they were already in place, his mind kept going back to the moment she whispered, "Thank you." It was quiet but powerful. It stayed with him the whole night, but she didn't come. One day passed, then two. No word from her, no damaged armor left at his table, no silent figure sitting in the corner. Eli tried to focus on other jobs, but something in him felt wrong. It wasn't worry like with a friend. It was something different, something heavier, like knowing a deep secret, but not being allowed to speak it. On the third day she finally returned, but this time she wasn't alone. Two guards stood behind her as she walked into the repair room. They wore cold expressions and kept their hands near their sidearms. Eli nodded at them politely, but they didn't respond. The warrior didn't say a word either. She moved like a ghost, quiet and slow. Her right arm wasn't working. The armor piece hung awkwardly as if something beneath was broken, not just the armor. The flesh, too. Eli walked closer and saw the bruises under the cracked plate. Fresh, deep purple and blue marks along her ribs. She tried to stand tall, but he noticed her knees were weak. She didn't meet his eyes this time. Eli wanted to ask if she was all right, but he remembered the warning in her look. Before he said nothing, the guard stood by the door as he worked. Their eyes followed every move. It made him nervous. He couldn't show it. He opened the damaged plating and began to clean the inside. That's when he saw them. More burn marks, newer ones, and something else too. Small scar across her lower neck, hidden just under the edge of the armor. A thin metal line. It wasn't a scar, it was a control tag, a device used on prisoners to track, to punish, to control their nerves with a remote signal. Eli's heart pounded. This wasn't a soldier. This was a captive. He looked at her face again. Her jaw was clenched. Her eyes stayed away from his. He wiped his hands and leaned closer as if checking something. "Oh, in the wiring," then whispered so low the guards couldn't hear. "Why are they hurting you?" Her eyes flicked to him for a second, then away again. "No answer," he whispered. "Again, you're not a soldier, are you?" Still no answer, but her left hand twitched. It was a sign of silent yes. Continued working without looking at her again. He repaired the circuits in the chest plate and strengthened the connectors at the arms. He knew the guards were watching his hands, so he moved slow, natural calm. He leaned in again. "There's a tracking chip in your armor. They're monitoring you, probably every word you say." She didn't react, but he noticed her breathing change, shallow, sharp, like panic. He didn't push more. When he finished the repair, he stood and stepped back. She rose slowly. Her knees nearly gave out. Eli reached to support her, but she waved him off gently. Her pride was still strong, even if her body was not. The guards opened the door. She walked through it without turning back, but something fell from her armor, a tiny piece of paper. No one saw it except Eli. He bent quickly and slipped it into his palm. Later, alone in his room, Eli opened the note. It had one line. "I remember pain before silence." He stared at the words for a long time. What did she mean? Was it a cry for help, a warning, or a clue? He didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Eli searched every file he could access in the system. He found records of transfers from Zinther prison camp to the military base. Most names were blacked out, but one was clear: Carol. Zarian, female, listed as dead in the prison riot 6 months ago. Dead, but she was standing in his repair room just yesterday. Eli leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking. He now knew something that could get him killed. Carol was not just a prisoner. She was supposed to be erased, hidden, forgotten. And someone was keeping her alive as a ghost soldier. Eli looked at the paper. Again, her silent tear made sense now. Her voice had not been silent by choice. It had been taken, and now the question burned in his mind: would he risk everything to help her, or stay silent like everyone else? Because behind her armor, behind the cracked plates and burnt skin, was not just a warrior. There was someone still trying to survive, even if the world refused to hear her name. No one spoke. The next time Carol came to the workshop, Eli was already waiting. He had prepared a decoy scanner, a fake tool that looked normal but didn't send alerts. The room was locked from the inside. No guards this time. Maybe they had grown tired of watching him work on armor. Maybe they trusted he wouldn't ask questions. They were wrong. Carol walked in slowly. Her steps were heavier than before. Her eyes seemed darker. She sat on the same metal bench and placed her armor on the table, but this time she didn't sit in silence. She looked directly at Eli. "I have no more time," she whispered, but Ellie didn't answer. He acted like he was checking the chest plate, but he leaned closer and spoke quietly. "Then we better talk fast." Cariel touched her chest just above where the tracker chip was hidden. Her face was tight with pain. She slid a small metal piece toward him, half of a broken transmitter. "I ripped this out last night. It hurt," she said without emotion. Eli took it and slipped it in his tool belt. "Why now?" he asked softly. She looked at him again, then looked away. "I heard them say my name," she said. Eli froze. He had never heard her name spoken out loud before. Only read it on a blacklisted file. Cal, a name erased from the system, marked as dead. And now someone had said it again. They said Carol is still breathing, that she has become a ghost. She added. Eli placed his tools down and sat across from her. "Tell me everything." She hesitated. Her fingers clutched the edge of the bench. For the first time, her voice shook. "I was one of 8 sent to Zenthar prison during the rebellion. The others died within weeks. I survived not because I was strong, but because I obeyed." Her voice turned hollow. "They made me test armor under real fire, pain suits, shock frames. They made me walk into blasts. If I screamed, they hit me harder, so I stopped screaming. I stopped speaking. That's when they started calling me useful." Eli's hands clenched. He couldn't look at her. She continued anyway. "One day the prison caught fire. People escaped, but they dragged me out and erased me. They used my ID to fake a corpse and gave me a new identity, a tool with no name. They sent me here to test gear again. Quietly, no one was supposed to notice me." Eli spoke slowly. "But I did." She gave a small nod. "You noticed the tear, the one thing I couldn't hide." Her voice dropped lower. "You were the first person in years to look at me like I was alive." Silence filled the room for a long time. Eli Finally asked the question that had haunted him for days. Why didn't you run? After the prison burned down, Carol looked at him with tired eyes. Where would I go? No name, no voice, no place. Even my own people called me coward when I came back. They thought I let the others die. No one wanted me, not even the enemy, so I stayed invisible. Eli leaned forward. You're not invisible anymore. She looked away again, but her jaw trembled slightly. That's when Eli made his decision. He stood up and locked the side panel of the workshop, then turned to her. I'll help you disappear for real this time, but you'll need to trust me. Carol blinked. Why? Because your silence doesn't deserve change, it deserves peace. She didn't respond right away, but then she slowly removed a small patch from under her sleeve and handed it to him. It had a symbol, a bird with burned wings. That was our squad, she said. All of them are gone, but I want to live for them. Eli took the patch and nodded. He opened his drawer and pulled out a small data chip. I've been collecting access logs, patrol patterns, guard schedules. If we time it right, we can get you out through the cargo route in 3 days. The ship carries scrap metal. No one scans it fully. Carol's breath caught. You've been planning this already. Eli gave a small smile. I had hoped you'd say yes. She looked at him long and hard. Then she whispered, Eli, thank you. Her voice was steadier now, and he noticed something new. It wasn't just survival anymore. There was fire again in her voice, tiny but real. Carol stood slowly and picked up her armor. As she turned to leave, she paused near the door. My name, it means flame in the dark. Eli smiled to himself as the door closed. He now knew her name, and soon the world would forget the silent ghost, because Carol was done hiding and Eli was done staying quiet. Together they would break the silence, the hidden signal. Eli worked late into the night. The lights in his workshop flickered now and then, but he didn't stop. His hands were covered in grease, his eyes tired, but his mind sharp. On the table in front of him was Carol's armor. She had left it behind today, not by accident. It was a silent signal. She trusted him. Now inside the chest plate, Eli found what he feared, a hidden transmitter. It was small, flat, and buried deep. The energy core, not something a normal scan could detect. It was sending out short pulses, barely readable, but enough to track her, enough to betray her. Eli's stomach turned. He carefully removed the chip and placed it into a lead-line box. Then he picked up his scanner and ran it over the rest of the suit. He found 2 more micro-trackers, one near the shoulder, one sewn into the inner lining of the boots. Someone didn't want Kyle to disappear. Someone wanted her watched at all times. He sat down and stared at the pieces. His fingers tapped the table. This wasn't military protocol. These were black ops tools, illegal even for war prisoners. This was personal. Someone powerful wanted to own her. A soft knock broke his focus. He opened the side panel and found Carol standing in the shadows. Her eyes moved to the armor instantly. She stepped in and closed the door behind her. You found it, she said quietly. Eli nodded and showed her the chips. 3 trackers, not one. You were being watched even in your sleep. Carol didn't speak for a moment. Then she touched her throat where the old control scar was. They were afraid I'd speak. They thought silence made me weak, but silence is where I planned everything. Eli watched her carefully. You knew this day would come. She looked at him. Yes, I just didn't know if anyone would stand beside me when it did. Eli stood and handed her a small device. This disruptor will block their signal for exactly 6 minutes. After that, they'll know something is wrong. We have to move fast. Once it's activated, Carol took it and nodded. Where will we go? There's a cargo drop heading to the old refinery on Moonka 3. No scans, no guards. I spoke to an old friend. He agreed to delay the scatter sweep if I send him a signal at the right time. Carol narrowed her eyes. Is he human? Eli chuckled softly. No, he's a three-eyed lizard from Arvax, but he owes me 20 credits and a broken finger. That made Carol smirk just a little. It was the first time Eli had seen any kind of smile on her face. He liked it, but there was no time for peace. She pointed to the armor. I won't wear it again. It was made to break me, burn me. Silence. Me, I want to leave it behind. Eli nodded. Then we'll build you something else, something that's yours. Carol stepped closer for a second. The distance between them vanished. She whispered, they'll come for me, not because I escaped, but because I know their secrets. I remember the faces, the rooms, the screams of others. They know I carry the truth. Eli reached into a drawer and pulled out a data chip. He placed it in her hand. Then let the truth fly with you. This chip copies your vitals, confirms your name, shows the scars they gave you. I'll upload it to public networks the moment you vanish. Let the whole galaxy see what they did to Carol. She gripped it tightly. No, don't send it yet. Let them think they still have time. Let them search shadows while I run free. Eli nodded. They had one night to prepare. One shot as she left. Carol paused near the door again. This time her voice didn't shake. Tomorrow we disappear. Eli watched her vanish into the corridor, turned back to the armor on his table, the cold metal that once wrapped her like a cage. He took a torch and burned the symbol on its chest. No more chains, no more ghosts. Carol would no longer be hidden, and Eli was no longer just a mechanic. He was now part of something bigger, something dangerous, but something right. Tomorrow everything would change, and he would be ready, running from shadows. The night was quiet but heavy with danger. Every light flicker felt like a warning. Every hallway seemed longer than usual. Eli walked fast, but not too fast. His jacket hid the disruptor. His boots made soft steps across the metal floor. He was heading toward the lower cargo zone, Sector D, where scanners were always half broken and guards lazy from boredom. Coral was already waiting in the shadows. She had no armor now, just a dark travel cloak and silent eyes that watched everything. Her movements were smooth like a hunter, her breathing slow and calm, but Eli knew her heart was racing. His was too. You sure about this? He whispered. Carol gave a small nod. I've never been more sure of anything. They didn't speak more. Words could make noise. Noise could bring eyes, and the wrong eyes could kill them both. They moved through old maintenance shafts, ducking low under pipes and climbing down rusted ladders. Eli led the way, guiding her through narrow paths only mechanics knew. Kroll followed closely, her eyes always scanning behind them. Just when they reached the final tunnel, Eli froze. Voices. 2 guards were walking the path ahead. One of them laughed. I heard a Zirium was crying again. These freaks are getting too soft. Carol stiffened behind him, her jaw tightened, but she didn't move. Eli slowly pulled out a small sound emitter and tossed it down a side pipe. The sharp noise made both guards turn and walk toward it. They slipped past the other way, unnoticed at last they reached the heavy service door to cargo bay. Deli entered a code. The door clicked, then stopped. Red light system locked. Ali swore under his breath. They've changed the clearance. Carol stepped forward. Let me. She placed her hand on the control panel and closed her eyes. A low buzz sounded. Light blinked green. The door slid open. Eli stared at her. You hacked it. She didn't answer. They moved inside. Cargo bay was full of crates and half-loaded pallets. A large transport shuttle sat at the far end, its ramp open, engine silent. Eli turned to Carol. This is it. The ship leaves in 15 minutes. Once we're inside, we activate the disruptor and stay hidden in the scrap unit. It's thick enough to block all scans. Carol nodded but didn't move. Her eyes were fixed on the upper walkway. Eli followed her gaze. A figure stood there, his face half hidden behind a visor. Commander Rivik. Eli felt cold. Rivik was known for one thing: making problems disappear without looking. The commander spoke. Carol, did you really think we wouldn't notice? Carol stepped in front of Eli. No more running, she said. Ravik smiled without warmth. I agree. He raised his hand, but before he could give the signal, Carol leapt. She moved faster than Eli had ever seen. Her foot hit the wall and she sprang up onto the walkway in seconds. Guards yelled. Blasters fired. Eli dove behind a crate and pulled the disruptor from his coat. He pressed it. The air around him shimmered as the signal jamming field kicked in. Carl reached Rivik and slammed into him with full force. They rolled across the floor. She pinned him and ripped the visor from his face. His expression changed from calm to panic. You were supposed to stay silent, he hissed. Carol leaned close. Not anymore. She knocked him out with one punch and grabbed his clearance card. Eli ran up the ramp of the ship. Coral followed. With blood on her knuckles, they reached the scrap unit and climbed inside, pulling metal sheets over them. The disruptor ticked down. 4 minutes left. Carol breathed hard, blood dripping from a cut above her eye. Eli pressed his hand over the wound. Gently. We made it, he said. She nodded, barely smiling. They'll chase us. I know they'll send more. I hope they do, Eli whispered. Cora looked at him, and for the first time, there was no fear in her eyes, only fire. The engines rumbled to life. The shuttle began to rise behind them. Alarm screamed through the base, but it was too late. The cargo ship vanished into the black sky, and with it the woman who had once been only a silent ghost. Now she was free, and she wasn't going to hide again. The betrayal and the firefight. The scrap cargo ship floated silently. Space, its lights dim, engines running just enough to drift toward Moon Ka 3. Inside the hidden compartment, Eli and Carol sat in complete darkness. The metal walls around them blocked all signals and noise. It was cold, cramped, and quiet, but for the first time, Carol wasn't shaking. She closed her eyes and whispered something in her native tongue. Eli sat beside her, arms folded, trying to ignore the sharp pain in his back from the metal floor. Do you think they'll follow us? He asked. Carol opened her eyes. They already are, but not fast enough to stop us now. Eli gave a small smile. He had risked everything: his job, his life, his future, for a warrior who used to cry in Silence, and somehow he didn't regret it. After several hours, the ship's AI made a soft announcement, entering Sita 3 atmosphere, prepare for gravity shift. Eli stood up, helping Carol stretch her legs. Her wound was healing, but she still moved like her body remembered every past injury. They stepped out of the hidden compartment and into the main hold, but something was wrong. The ship wasn't slowing down. Eli rushed to the pilot controls. No one was there. He tapped the screen. Manual override locked. Carol stepped beside him. Where's the pilot? Eli's heart dropped. There never was one. This wasn't a real cargo mission. At that moment, the control panel lit up. Incoming message. Eli opened it. Familiar voice spoke. Did you really think I wouldn't find you, Eli? It was Commander Rivik. You stole government property, and worse, you took my favorite experiment. Carol's hands clenched, her voice cold. I'm not your experiment anymore. Rivik laughed through the speaker. Funny because I'm still holding your escape key. Say hello to your friend. The screen flickered. A video appeared. Eli's old colleague, Jairn, the one who owed him favors, was in chains, his face bruised. Carol looked at Eli. You trusted someone. Eli stepped back, shocked. I thought he was safe. He helped us before Coral turned away. You never tested him. You only hoped. Eli felt the guilt hit him like a punch. Before he could respond, the ship shook hard. Alarms blared. Docking clamps engaged. External boarding in progress. They were being pulled into a hidden hangar. It was a trap. Carol looked at him and handed him a weapon from the storage rack. You still want to stand beside me? Eli took it. I didn't come this far to run now. The doors at the back hissed. Red lights flashed. Shadows moved behind the glass of light. Soldiers, Rivik's personal unit. The doors burst open. Carol moved first. Like a storm, she slammed into the nearest soldier, taking his weapon. Before he hit the ground, Eli fired from behind a crate covering her. The room turned into chaos. Sparks flew. Blasts lit the walls. Kyle moved like fire. Her cloak ripped. Her fists full of rage. But it wasn't enough. More soldiers rushed in. One of them fired a shock dart. It hit Eli in the leg. He fell, screaming in pain. Carol roared. She charged, ignoring the burns on her skin, ignoring the blood in her eyes. She reached Eli and pulled him behind a wall of crates. Stay down, she said. He tried to stand. I won't leave you. She looked at him with strange calm. Then, help me finish this. Carol pulled something from her belt, the disruptor. She twisted it open, rewiring it. Quickly, Eli stared. That's going to fry every signal in the room. She nodded. And every brain chip inside their helmets. He hesitated. If you trigger that, you might kill them. She didn't blink. They're already dead to me. Before he could stop her, she pressed the button. The ship exploded with light. The soldiers screamed as their suits short-circuited. One by one they dropped. Smoke filled the air. He coughed, pulling himself toward her. She was on her knees. The device burned in her hand. He lifted her gently. You did it. Carol looked at him. No, we did. Sirens wailed again. The ship was failing. Eli dragged her to the escape pod and strapped her in. She grabbed his hand. Promise me if I don't make it, tell them my name. Eli leaned close. You're going to make it. And they'll remember your name because you'll be the one to say it. He hit the launch. The pod shot out into the stars. Behind them, the cargo ship exploded into flames, but inside the small pod, Krell was alive, burned, bleeding, but Free, and Eli was with her together. Running no more, fighting for a future. That still had no name, but one day. It was the warrior without chains. The escape pod landed hard on a quiet moon covered in gray dust and tall, jagged rocks. The sky was dark purple, with 3 broken moons glowing above. Carol and Eli crawled out into the cold air, coughing from smoke and tired from everything they had survived. Eli limped, still feeling the burn in his leg from the shock dart. Carol helped him walk. Her own face was bruised and one side of her arm was burned, but she kept moving forward. There was no chase. Now no soldiers behind them, no sirens. Just wind and silence. They found shelter in a cave near a dry stream. It wasn't much, but it blocked the wind. Eli made a small fire from emergency supplies. Carol sat across from him, breathing slow and deep. Her eyes stayed on the flames. Her cloak was torn and her hands were still shaking slightly. But this time it wasn't fear, it was release. Eli broke the silence. You're not a ghost anymore. Carol looked at him. No, I'm not. They ate quietly, sharing water and dried rations. After a while, Eli reached into his coat and pulled out the data chip she had given him before they escaped. The evidence. Your truth, it's still here. Do you want me to send it? Carol looked down at her burned hands. Not yet. Eli blinked in surprise. Why not? She took a deep breath. Because I don't want revenge to be the first thing they know about me. I want them to hear my voice first, not my pain. Eli smiled. That's fair. Carol stood slowly and walked outside the cave. Eli followed. They stood on a cliff edge, looking at the vast sky above them. This place has no name, Eli said. Carol closed her eyes. Then maybe we give it one. They stayed there in silence for a while. Later that night, they began building a shelter using the pod's parts and nearby stones. Kyle was skilled. She used scrap metal and shaped a wall that stood strong against the wind. Eli helped as much as he could, dragging supplies and setting up the solar battery. Day by day they created a home. It wasn't much, but it was safe. And Carol changed. She started talking more, not much, but her words came slowly. Carefully, she told him stories of her planet, the songs her mother sang before war took everything. She laughed once while telling how she got stuck in a vent during training. It was a soft laugh, quick and uncertain, like it surprised even her. Eli noticed something else too. She stopped, looking over her shoulder. One evening while fixing a panel outside the shelter, Kroll turned to him. I used to think silence was my strength, that if I spoke, I'd break apart. Eli listened quietly, but now I realized silence was the cage they gave me, and I wore it like armor. She reached up and pulled off the last piece of her old armor, just a small shoulder plate she had kept. She tossed it off the cliff. Eli watched it fall into the mist below. You're free now, he said. She stepped closer. No, I'm alive now. Eli gave her the comm link. It's time. Carol nodded. She uploaded the data chip into the satellite relay. A signal burst into space, racing toward Allied systems. The truth was free. Her scars, her story, her name. Carol flame in the dark. She didn't flinch this time. She stood tall as the wind brushed her hair. Later that week, a small transport ship landed quietly on the moon. It brought supplies and a message. Carol was not alone anymore. Others had seen her signal. Other survivors, other broken voices. They came one by one and listened and followed, not because she demanded it, But because they believed her, Eli watched as Carol stood in front of them. No armor, no chains, no silence. She spoke clearly. My name is Carol. They tried to erase me, but I chose to live. And I will never be silent again. Cheers broke through the cold air. Eli smiled. From the edge of the crowd, she was no longer the crying warrior in a cold metal chair. She was a leader now, a symbol, and maybe something more. Later that night, Carol found him by the fire. She sat beside him and whispered, "You didn't fix just my armor." He looked at her. "No, I fixed what was underneath." She leaned gently against him. For the first time in years, she slept without fear, and somewhere in the stars, the mall named Carl burned bright. A warrior without chains forever.